Hey everybody, welcome back to GWN. Today we're going to talk about base design on the builder's base. How to best design your base to make it the most functional and hopefully to make it the best at defending against a variety of attacks. Now, there are all kinds of base designs out there for the builder's hall, and some are great and some are, well, not so great, but there are some basic things you can do to make your base be its strongest. Now keep in mind, no base can defend against everything. And a lot of these clickbait ads you see with anti one star or best BH whatever ever, yeah, the bases may be okay, but they're not the best. They're not anti one star. That just doesn't exist in this game. So keep that in mind as you look at the base designs or come up with your own. None are perfect. They just all have their own pluses and minuses. Now, the goal of any good base design is to path, block, and surprise. The best designs will take advantage of known troop weaknesses and target preferences to reduce an opponent's army size or even decimate it entirely. Using these target preferences will help you to path the troops to where you want them to go, to get them to do what you want them to do. Your walls are, of course, your blocker. I mean, they stop troops from getting through, but they also are really good and important for pathing. And the way you place your mines and traps, that's what's going to surprise your opponent, along with sometimes the pathing itself. I mean, a lot of times, a well-designed base, the pathing will take somebody's troops in a completely different direction from what they thought they were going to go. So let's start off with some general tips. First and foremost, never, ever, ever put a structure somewhere that it's just a giveaway. You know, like say putting a structure up at the very top of your base. You'll see that a lot of people will have something left over and they'll just stick it at the very top like that. Well, that's a giveaway. You're just giving somebody free percentage points. Don't do that. Make sure that everything has a purpose within the design of the base. For example, here we see the Pagoda Diamond. If you look at the bottom, I have right here a gold mine that seems to be just a giveaway. What's the point of that being there? Well, it's not really a giveaway. Ideally, what's going to happen is somebody's going to start their attack down there. So it looks like we're giving something away. It looks like it's an easy few percentage points. And in a lot of cases, it can be. But if somebody starts an attack down there, that's going to get them driving right up the middle to where they're going to run into things like these spring traps and push traps. And eventually, of course, they're going to run into the archer tower and the crushers and so forth. So at least this gold mine serves some minor purpose, okay? You also want to avoid placing your defenses of the same type right next to each other. A lot of times you'll see people will take their firecrackers and put them literally right next to each other like that, or sometimes even like this. You don't really get a whole lot of double damage from putting things together like that, believe it or not. When you're looking at whatever's going to attack you, for example, say the beta minions, they're going to bunch up on those things, and yeah, each one of them is going to take out more beta minions combined at the same time from that group, but more than likely what's happening is you've got 10 beta minions, and they're firing 5 apiece on either or. Sometimes it works out, most of the time it doesn't. So my general recommendation, keep your defenses spread out a little bit. Don't put them on top of each other. You know, again, looking at the Pagoda Diamond here, you can see the two firecrackers have a pretty good solid coverage of the half of the base that they're covering, as well as a pretty good amount on the bottom down here as well. The idea of that expanded coverage is really much better than having them right on top of each other and having very limited coverage. Think about how you would attack the base and then tighten it up. You know, looking at this one, would I come up from the bottom? Would I come from the side, the top? You know, how would you best come at this? And at the same time, make sure you're avoiding those dense, tight little bases where somebody puts everything right on top of each other. Even a base like this could be spread out more. When you take a look at one of my favorites, let's bring this one up real quick. This is one of the diamond bases that I use. Things are all over the place. And when you come at this from really any angle, you've got enough spread that it's going to draw your team apart. Your army's not going to stay together. Now that could be something as simple as the mass minions being pulled apart into multiple smaller groups than what you would like, or it could also be for ground troops, things like, for example, barbarians being pulled apart. I've seen barbarians go all over the place when they have multiple targets, just depending upon how they're dropped and what their initial spread is. So try to kind of spread things out. Don't put it all on top of each other, because when you do, those dense bases tend to take more, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, the type of damage that they take, it's intensified. It's more dense, if you will. Be sure, too, that if you're using somebody else's design, move things around a little bit, like, the traps and the mines. I mean, for example, this base I've shown up before. You see where I've got everything put in the air bomb or air mines set up and so forth. Move things around a little bit. Maybe flip it around 180 degrees so that this side is actually over here, or the bottom is up at the top, or whatever. Just try to kind of mix it up a little bit so that somebody doesn't necessarily recognize it from one of these videos or from somebody else's base that they recently took down. You don't want to be obvious about where things are and how you're running your base, because if you are obvious, well, people know to look for that. For example, one of the things I heard on another video recently is that players have a habit of putting an air mine right next to the air bombs. So for whatever reason, they'll put an air mine like right here, for example. And it's usually the mega mine. It's not usually just a regular mine, but actually a mega mine. It's kind of overkill. I mean, the air bombs are going to take out whatever is going to be going through there, so you generally don't need to put an air mine there. It's not needed. I mean, look at the range. The air bombs is going to cover it, so why do you need that air mine there? So instead of putting that air mine there, maybe you move it someplace like down here, so that if somebody decides to come up from the bottom with an air attack, at least there's a little surprise down there for them. So move things around. Try not to be obvious. If you're using somebody else's design, make sure you make some small differences in it so that it's more your own than another's. Another thing that's really important is establishing a path. Now, I think the Pagoda Base is really good for this. You want to direct the enemy to go a certain direction. You want to get them to start in a certain place. And when you look at this base, the obvious place to start is from the bottom. The positioning of the base, the opening, and so forth, it looks very inviting. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of anything down there when you take a look at it. Looking at it from a scout's view, there's going to be some kind of trap somewhere and that the hidden Tesla's going to be there. But look at all those buildings you can shoot through. I mean, it looks like a pretty good place to start from the bottom. That's directing them. That's luring them down there. And it's what a base like this does. The best place to start on this particular base is actually from the sides. You want to come in on either side if you can, and then work your way through the base from the left to the right or right to the left. And that's what I typically do when I actually face this base in battle. But the way it's been set up, we've actually given people a path that we want them to go. Likewise, when you're designing your base, make sure that it's designed toward the current meta, what's going on in the game at the time. I was running my other diamond base yesterday, and it was just getting crucified for some reason. I don't know why. Just over and over again, lots and lots of losses. So I switched it up and moved over to this Pagoda style diamond base that a lot of higher level players have been using lately. And it's been winning. It's been winning quite a lot, actually. It's had a couple of losses. I had a loser streak there. But you can see there's plenty of wins in there as well. And that's just over the last, 12 to 14 hours there. So you need to design the base such that it will work within whatever the current meta is. If I notice that I'm losing a lot to ground, well, maybe I'll drop some of my mines from air to ground. Maybe I'll move my traps so that they're not at the corner but up towards the middle because everybody's coming that way. If I notice that everybody's coming in from the side over there, well, maybe I'll take this trap and I'll move it over to the side. It's all a matter of designing in a way that fits what's going on in the game at the time. And keep in mind that each level actually has certain preferred attacks. For those of you who are playing at Builders Hall 5, the first, we'll say 600 trophies or so, call it trophy levels 1500 to 2000, are typically ground attacks. You're not going to see a whole lot of air attacks because most players don't really have the level 10 troops to engage in air attacks there. You'll get them every once in a while, but it's going to be mostly Barch or something similar. Now, once you hit 2200 on up, you're going to get tons and tons and tons of air attacks. So you want to be able to defend against those air attacks, and that's when you'd make a change in things like, your mines or the way you've positioned your air bombs, or whether your archer towers are up or down, things like that. That will allow you to better defend against whatever the current attack favorite is. And keep in mind, each troop has a weakness. So this type of base, for example, you look at the shroud up at the top there. What's the design idea here? You've got a wall and then two spaces and then some defensive structure. Well, the idea of that design is to deal with sneaky archers, because the sneaky archer will not be able to fire across the additional number of tiles. They'll actually have to break into the compartment. Now, granted, they can get stuff all over at the bottom without too much of a problem, don't get me wrong. But the simple fact of the matter is they're not going to be able to do a whole heck of a lot against those top ones. You're going to have to use something else, like, say, beta minions, which have a further range for their attack. Or maybe night witches, which can hit it either with their fireball equivalent or with their bats. Things like that. The battle machine loves the crusher and firecrackers. Double cannons rip them up. You've got the rage barbarians, which they've got an affinity for the crusher, I'll tell you what. Night witches, best thing to take them out are mines. A lot of people, since so many attacks on Night Witch start up the very top apex, what people will do is they'll take one of their mega mines and put it like right about here in ground mode. And when somebody drops all their Night Witches at the top, as soon as they get down to that, boom, they blow up. Some people even put them a little bit further down, say right about there. And it'll get them. It's got enough of a range because most people drop their Night Witches all the way at the top corner. You could do the same thing with regular mines if you don't want to give up your mega mine. Put, say, 3 mega mine or regular mines up there in ground, and they'll take that as well. Your beta minions, we've talked about this many a time. The beta minion mass destruction weapon is, of course, the air bombs and the roasters. Level 6 multi-mortar can take out a sneaky archer in a single volley. These are all individual troop weaknesses that you want to pay attention to, that you can use to your benefit when you're designing the base. Now, let's talk for a minute just about air defenses. First and foremost, you want to centralize your air defenses as much as you can. Now, the Pagoda Base does this to a degree, maybe not as well as some other bases, but you'll see they're all centered around that builder's hall there in the middle. If you put them on the perimeter around the outside, they're really easy to reach. So I always recommend against doing that. But by having them more or less in the middle, you're going to be much better off. Likewise, you want to separate them. We already talked a little bit about this. Don't put them right on top of each other. In this particular base, I have the air bombs and the roaster right next to each other on either corner of the builder's hall. I usually don't do that. In fact, I usually place them on opposite sides of the builder hall. And you can see that in some of the other designs I have. Let's take a look at the meta base here. Here you see the roasters on one side and the air bombs on the other. By having them split up like that, you get a really solid air troop targeting defensive shield. You get much greater coverage. You see we got the coverage on the right side of the base, and here we got the coverage on the left side of the base. And it gets the top and the bottom to a degree as well. Anybody who approaches from either side is going to have a problem with that particular defense. And because they're pulled in and you've got junk buildings, in this case, a couple of high capacity junk buildings, and over here, junk buildings, and even a defense, the hidden Tesla, you're not going to take these two out very easily. So You want to kind of centralize your air defenses, as we've done in this particular case, but keep them separate and put some buildings between them and the outer perimeter so that nothing can just come in and take them out. Talking about these high hit point buildings, the Star Laboratory and the Clock Tower, both of them have a decent number of hit points. 1658 for the Clock Tower, 1658 for the Star Lab. If you can put some high hit point structures out there, if somebody comes in with beta minions, or for that matter if they come in with baby dragons, they're going to hang up on those for a while. And while they're beating on those, you have defenses like your firecrackers or even an archer tower, depending upon where they're at, that can hammer on them and take them out. That's very disruptive to any attack that anybody does. Another great thing is what I like to call mines of last resort. Let's see, do I have a base that has some mines of last resort set up? This is where you put a couple of your mines right at the very front of your builder's hall. Yeah, I don't really have one set up on this particular game. Think of it like this. A player is coming up to the builder's hall, and as they reach the builder's hall, they've got that one last minion. He's got nothing targeting him. He's just about to take the builder's hall down. He moves up to it, and boom, he gets blown away. Mines of last resort are great if you have a base design with some open slots to thwart those kinds of attacks. So, like for example, taking this mine, setting it to air. If somebody comes up from the bottom, and let's say they do manage to take out the two firecrackers, and they've got one last minion left, and they drop it, it goes up, it targets the builder's hall. As soon as it gets within range of the builder's hall, boom, off goes the mine, and the beta minion is killed. That is a mine of last resort, and it's really very good at taking out any of a number of last effort, ditch effort type air attacks that you'll see. If you use a mega mine, it's even better because it'll take whatever comes at it out, even a baby dragon. But mines of last resort, it's a good option. I'm starting to wonder if maybe I ought to leave that there. Likewise, the mega mine, really good for taking out spammers. You'll notice in this particular base, I have a mega mine set to air at the top and a mega mine set to air at the bottom. Most people, if they're going to attack, they're going to attack from the north or south apex. And if they're going to drop a whole bunch in spam, well, guess what? That's where they're going to drop it. So I like putting that there so that when they reach it, it takes out a whole bunch of their beta minions, and their spam attack just kind of croaks. For the battle machine, you want to put your firecrackers next to your crushers to lure them. That's always a great thing. So in the case of this base, if a battle machine was to come in from the bottom or from on one of the sides here and go for that firecracker, he's going to stand probably right between the firecracker and the elixir storage and the star lab in that little block there and get hammered by the crusher. This is a known issue with the builder's base. We've complained about it since day one. Some of the zany things that this battle machine will do. Another thing that you want to do is put your guard posts such that the troops are within range of one of the crushers. If the battle machine walks up and he's working on the crusher, he will stop working on it and turn and beat on the troops while the crusher takes him down. I don't know why they've designed his AI to do this, but it's pretty consistent. So you can use either one of these to really effectively damage the battle machine or take it out altogether. Lastly, make sure that you've got your double cannons not on top of each other, but out to the sides so that they can also work on the battle machine. Properly positioned, they'll take it down in no time at all. I mean, I've seen them take it down in just a few shots, especially if the battle machine has taken damage from other structures, either concurrently or had already taken some damage. I'm told that the new giant cannon that comes in Builder's Hall 7 is going to be able to take a level 15 battle machine down in just a big whopping 3 shots. That's going to be interesting. You want to use your pathing, talking about ground defense here a little bit more. You want to use your pathing of defense structures to draw defense targeting troops like giants into the crushers. Now, this base, not as good an example of it. I think the meta base is, though. Yeah. You've got your crushers sitting out to the sides. No matter how a giant comes in, he's going to find his way to those crushers. Battle Machine will do the same thing. That's one of the benefits of the meta as well as the bracket style bases. But if you have your defenses set up such that they go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, you can actually path your giants. You'll know where they're going to go. So if a giant comes in up at the top right here, he's going to go first to the cannon. Then he's going to go probably to the crusher. He might go over to the multi-mortar, but the reality is he'll probably go over to the crusher, or he might even go up to the firecrackers. And either one of those put him within range of that crusher. If he does by chance go over to the multi-mortar, then he's going to have to deal with our guard post troops and our roaster, as well as two overlapping archer towers. Third one, of course, is just a little bit too far out of range. This kind of pathing will enable you to lessen the amount of damage that a defense targeting troop like the giant can actually do. Now, walls. What's the purpose of walls, and for that matter, even compartments within a base design? Walls slow things down, or they path them. It's one or the other. Take your pick. We've already talked about my general preferred base, which has walls all over the place to direct traffic, if you will. If something comes in from the right, it may start to hammer on one of those walls, or it may walk up and come around and work its way in up here. Either way, the purpose of the wall is one or the other, either to path or to block. Take your pick. Your typical closed box base, which we'll spend a little more time talking about here over the weekend, is going to use the walls to slow the troops down. And as such, you want to have on those box bases something that can actually target the troops. Let's see. Who's running a box base right now? It's Clash Maniac. Yeah. Oh, this will work. So let's say that a troop was to come up from the side where those beta minions are at down here by this these camps down here. The troop comes up and it starts to pound on the wall. I need something that can target that troop. Well, here I've got a regular cannon, and here I've got a double cannon in case it's the battle machine. Probably not going to be the hidden Tesla. He's probably not going to pop up yet. But if he does pop up, he'll be taking out anything that's coming in down there as well. Over on the sides, you've got archer towers that are going to target them. If they come in through the top, they're actually going to end up coming through one of these two openings by where the mines are. But there's an archer tower up there that can target them. The idea is, again, the walls are blocking. The walls are stopping that troop for a little bit so that the defenses can all hammer on it while it's hammering on the wall. Now, this will only work to a degree when you're dealing with something like, for example, the Raged Barbarians. I get that. But the general purpose is still the same. Now, likewise, a base like this one, the walls are going to be used to direct traffic. If something is over here on this side, or even down here in the corner or on this side, it's not going to hammer on the walls. What it's going to do is walk around and make its way into the middle to go for whatever it is that it's going to attack. So the walls will direct. These walls over here, they separate the main wall set from troops that might come in from the edge. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, it slows them down. It eats some of their time up. And it gives them an opportunity to spread out and do things that the attacker would not want them to do. So you want to use your walls to direct in that sense. We've also got a base that I've shared in the past. I don't think I've got it running right now. It's a funnel base. And this particular base uses all these concepts to funnel troops around. They won't simply go straight ahead. They won't simply attack whatever it is that you want them to attack. Instead, they walk down the sides. This is the same principles that you see here on the meta base. Something that comes in from the left side will take out things like this maybe, but then they'll walk around and into the living arms of the crusher. It's the same concept that's used on the various bracket bases that we'll be discussing. Again, there's not enough length for that troop to stop and pound on a wall. He's going to walk around. This is why we place high hit point structures in front of defensive structures. And I mentioned this before, especially on this base. You got the Star Lab and the clock tower. If they are pounded on this wall, whatever they are, they're getting pounded on as well. So think about that when you use your walls. Multiple compartments are really good for slowing troops as well. And we take a look at Cyberon. And here in this base design, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 compartments, including the shroud compartment at the top. When something breaks through a wall to get to one of the defenses that are in these compartments, they're going to spend a lot of time there. The shroud compartment at the top doesn't have any defenses to attract anything, but general targeting troops, like for example barbarians or sneaky archers, they're going to spend time there beating on that wall to get into those structures. And then of course when they do, they got to spend time beating on the next set of walls to get back out of there. Some of these bases that have large shrouds, like for example the Pagoda Base, I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've run this base in the last couple days and seen a battle machine break in through one of these two walls or even one of the walls along here and then just get stuck. And he has to hammer his way through everything in there, but the whole time he's getting beaten on. You've got the roaster, not for the ground troops. You know, even the cannons that can reach him, the double cannon that can reach in there. So he's getting hammered the whole time that he's in there. And then when he finally gets done, he's got to break back out. I cannot think of a better way to distract the battle machine and effectively take him out of the equation than to have him fall into one of these compartments like that, especially the large shroud compartment on this particular style of base. It's also why on a lot of these bases you'll see the defenses are set up to range outside of the base. Now, this double cannon, for example, if someone attacks from the side, they'll typically drop their battle machine right over here to take out this wall or this wall. They might get this wall up here. It just kind of depends on exactly how he runs. But the entire time he's pounding on a wall, that double cannon is pounding on him and taking away a pretty good sized chunk of his health. So if you use the walls and you use the structures and you use the defenses in this manner, you'll be able to really limit whatever the attacking troop is, whether it's a rage barbarian or it is a battle machine. Even sneaky archers, when they come off their cloak of invisibility there, will finally end up having an issue. Probably the last thing to talk about are push traps here. If you look at my bases, you'll see I like to use push traps to bounce people into the crushers. And just in case, I will drop push traps that go to push trap, that go to crusher. This is a very effective way of dealing with ground troops. It disrupts the overall flow of a ground attack. And since the fully developed push trap can actually handle a sprint capacity of 25 troop units, you can send a lot of troops to the next one and over to the crusher pretty quick. So it's actually fairly effective. And if you position them right, okay, what we've got here, this particular one is positioned waiting for troops that are going to come in this way from the right to try to take out, say, one of these walls. Or, say, a sneaky archer. Maybe somebody will drop a couple of them to go after these high hit point structures. The trickle attack of sneaky archers is really good for that. This one down here is positioned in much the same way. People will sometimes do kind of a half arc, a half moon, if you will, with their troops across one of the corners. Well, if they come in, they may hit those and get bounced. And, mix them up. There's no reason why it has to stay there. You could just as easily do something like that, for example. Maybe move that down one notch. Yeah, it's up to you. You just want to set it up so that the push traps will grab whatever ground troops are coming through and move them around to disrupt the attack. Your spring traps, they do okay, and they're really good for giants. You can drop 3 giants out of the game real quick, and since people typically only have 3 in a camp, you're really messing up their attack run pretty quick and pretty heavy. So position those in a way that will take advantage of the pathing. In this particular case, if somebody were to drop giants at the bottom, they would go up and they would probably path to the left or the right to go to those 2 crushers. That's why you see we have those 2 spring traps sitting right there. If they come in from the top and they beat their way in through the wall there, I don't know why, but for some reason things tend to go to the right. I don't know, who can say. So I put that there to grab them so that when they come in and start heading down toward the multi-mortar there, which will be their ultimate destination, I'll grab a few of them as they go by. And as I said before with traps, move things around. Don't keep anything in the same place. Above all, remember, there is no single defense base design. No base can defend against everything that's out there. They all have their own pluses and minuses. They're all, benefits, pros and cons, whatever. They're all good for something. You just have to figure out the ones that work best for you and that are working best at any particular time for the specific meta. So that concludes our discussion on how to design a good, solid builder's base. If you got any questions, feel free to catch me on the forums or drop comments down below. We can do a part 2 later on after Builders Hall 7 is released to take a look at how some of these same tactics can be used to build a Builders Hall 7 base. I'd like to think that what I've talked about today really applies to just about any game, whether it's Builders Hall 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. They're just general, good, solid practices as you design your base. Our next series will be Builder Hall 6 bases themselves. I have 14 base designs. We're going to be putting up articles with all the pictures and then going through each one of them here on the channel as well. I've got 7 box style and 7 diamond style, so lots to choose from, and I'll try to break down some of the things that they each do as well when we go on the video and talk about how some of them are better than others and what makes them as such. At any rate, pound the like, pound the subscribe, and help me build this channel. Thank you to those of you who have done so far, and I will catch you all later. Thanks a lot for hanging out to the end. Bye-bye.